Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, Reality Check, and welcome to the new year. And Trump became president, and everything's flying like crazy, and never seen anything quite like it. But if you watched our last show that I did with Sheldon Moore, you know about that we're now passing into the Dwapara Yuga, and everything is getting better. I mean, that's what we're on the ascent into it. So everything is getting better and better, and so it's no surprise that suddenly things are going to function a little bit better. But anyway, I'm really glad we're out of the Kali Yuga, and it was a rough ride for the entire human race. And so you're back, Sheldon. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on your show.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Well, I wanted to just quickly recap a little bit on the lost calendars that we discussed about and really show your viewers about how you use the term monuments of memory. I wished I wrote that. You haven't trademarked that yet, have you? I wished I would have had that, the perfect way to describe it. And how those monuments of memory, they go back basically 13,000 years, 13 and a half thousand years, if I'm correct. And that back at that time, I knew that they were teaching, they had higher teachings. Madame Blavatsky once said that there was this primordial teaching that existed that came from ancient times that we lost. We lost it in the Dark Age.
Yeah.
And Buddha knew it, and this teaching as well. So, and I figured out what Buddha knew. And once I figured out what Buddha knew, it was really easy to figure out what all these sites were for. Everybody's looking at these sites and they're missing it. And by the end of the day, I think I'm going to show all your viewers how Gobekli Tepe, what it was really used for. And I think we're all off the mark on it. And I think that this hopefully will bring people back into alignment with what really went on in our past, because all these weird walls and stuff around, something bigger happened in our past.
Yeah, there's even a wall they discovered recently in Montana that's
Yeah,
a mile long and it's
yeah,
completely straight, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. And
yeah,
yeah, and so Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, and it was discovered about 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago by a
yeah.
German archaeologist who's now gone.
Well,
And
yeah,
and it's been carbon dated to around 12 to 13,000 years ago, and which is coincides exactly with what the Cross of Henday is saying when the last catastrophe happened. So, I've always been interested in Göbekli Tepe and what it is. I have no idea what it is, by the way.
yeah,
I'm not drawing any conclusions as to what it is, except for weird. And it's
yeah.
weird that they buried it too. I mean, why
Yeah.
would they go to all that effort to bury it? I mean, that just
And that's the interesting thing is when I first started bringing these teachings out about the Buddha and the Kalachakra Tantra in about, I think it was about 2017, I talk about how Stonehenge was misunderstood and what it was really used for. And right away I would get flooded. It was built in 1950. It was,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the Auberry holes, which it was 1660 that he was doing that research. He mapped the whole place. So now we have all these shills trying to convince everybody that, and it's by design. And then when I told your viewers about Gobekli Tepe having been buried, all of a sudden it was buried by a landslide. And you look at the site,
No,
it's not a
no
landslide.
way. It's
And
not.
so the next thing they're doing is I'm sure I've told everybody how they actually used it. It's an arithmetical ground calculator, just like Stonehenge, but it's way more advanced than Stonehenge. It's used differently. It doesn't go outside; it goes inside. The way they track the heavens, they're
what did you say it was?
arithmetical ground calculator. It's basically astronomy. They're doing Vedic sidereal zodiac
Yep.
or Babylonian sidereal zodiac or whatever, that's what these sites are all for.
Well, I
But
know that that's what Stonehenge really is.
oh yeah,
And um, and so you're saying Göbekli Tepe is the same thing. And this would
exactly.
make sense because there's nothing more important really than a calendar if you're agricultural.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it
And,
makes total sense.
yeah. And you mentioned another thing, agricultural. I want the viewers to think about that because if you go onto Google Earth and look down on that site, you'll go just a little bit south and it looks like an ancient lake bottom bed, and it's a massive fertile valley in Turkey, and it's one of the major agriculture. And you know damn well, 13,000 years ago, that soil was still fertile. So all of these spiritual sites are built right beside where you can grow grain. So I want people to think about the three bags that you see in all of these ancient sites. They're Anunnaki, basically markers saying we did all of this, and it's like a modern day version of a logo. Really, they left their logo what are those three bags for? And we're going to go through all that too. So
Are you talking about the Sumerian pictures of the bags?
the bags are also in stone, are Pillar 43. They're in the ancient sites in South America. They're all over the world. They found them they're in Vedic artwork. They're all
What
over
are
the world.
they? What are
Yes.
they? What are the bags?
The bags represent three things, and you were jumping ahead, but
Okay.
they represent. We'll go through the bags later. It's
All
cool.
right.
You're gonna like this.
So, let's go on with Gobekli Tepe then, I guess. How does it work?
Um, Couple more slides, and I'll show you exactly how it works.
All
Like
right.
I know, I've spent a lot of time on this.
All right. Here we go.
So there was these higher civilizations in this ancient world, and we don't know very much about them. So these megalithic structures were built before the Dark Age, a lot of them, I think. And then you got to remember, we also had an ice age throughout North America and Europe. Anything that was left there got ground down into powder 13, 14, because it was under ice. Um, we have these large walls all over the world, like that one in Syria. There's no way that they move that with rocks. And I once did a rock wall in my garden, and so I had to cut the rocks by myself with a hammer and chisel. And they only had copper tools, like in the time of when they did all the Egyptian stuff. They didn't do that with any hand tools. Like there's just no way. There's no way that stuff was done with a hand tool. And then how did they move them? You know, we could have 10, 300, 350 excavators and you wouldn't be able to move those rocks. So there's something missing there. So there was definitely a higher civilization in the past. But what I'm proposing in this, and I know for a fact now, is it was also an enlightened civil, and it makes sense, an enlightened civilization. If we go back, Gobekli Tepe was built right at the top of our golden age. If you go based on Tishwar's model,
Yeah.
and so the people back then, enlightenment would have come easier because they didn't have the dark age around them. But there's proof in Gobekli Tepe that they were teaching enlightenment there. I know for a fact now, and I'm going to show you soon what I found. So all of the stuff in the Laws Humanu that we talked about this 24,000 year cycle, all came out of ancient Vedic literature. Well, a lot of people knew what Zacharias Sitchin did, and that came out of the Sumerian stuff. And it's the same stories, the timing's just out. And I think sometimes things get lost in dark ages, and you always get an idiot that comes into power and things get twisted. But it all goes back to the Anunnaki, because if you think of the laws of Manu, which Yeshirik Tishwar Manu, Anu, and when you hear about Vimanas in Vedic literature, I think those are Anunnaki Vimanas that they're referring to. So at some point, I believe the Anunnaki weren't just mining for gold and genetic engineering. They chilled out after a couple 100,000 years and said, we got to leave these people alone and let them go on their own. Whatever we created is they're spiritual beings. And at some point we got respected. And so sites like Gobekli Tepe and all these monuments of memory were built as we ticked on into the dark age, so that when we came out, guys like you and me would figure it out, and we'd tell everybody what we think they're for, and we would figure it out. And that's what's, I think, occurring now as we leave the dark age. I don't think we're quite out of the dark age soon. I think it's soon,
Yeah, it's
real soon.
about 25 years from now, we'll be out of it.
Yeah. I think sooner than that, actually, but I don't know. You could be right. Nobody knows that, right?
Well,
But
it's going to get better every day, but we're going to find what we are is we're suffering the hangover. That's
yeah,
what we call it, and it's like just the worst hangover ever in the entire Yuga cycle. The coming out of the Kali Yuga is just you got PTSD and and it's all
Yeah.
being passed down from father and son to son,
Yeah.
and it's going to take a long while to get the hangover out of us.
Yeah.
We're
And
still frightened, and
and it is a good time. Like I'm a big fan of Jewish mysticism too. I find Jewish rabbis fascinating, and it's a time of repentance and forgive yourself now because we all fell down in the dark age. Every one of
right,
us. We all became dirtbags for a while, and we're leaving that place. Now it's time to realize we're leaving that place.
yep,
What can we do better?
that's right.
Can we become enlightened? Can we be better? And that's what this is about. But it's neat to. I just want to show everybody that we knew this a long time ago. We really did. I know the Buddha knew it for sure, and I knew Krishna knew what I'm about to teach you. And the reason it wasn't taught openly is because we were going into the dark age, and it
Yeah,
wasn't time.
yeah,
Padmasambhava wrote the Tibetan Book of the Living and the Dead. Well, yes, Shogul translated it, but they buried it for 700 years because they didn't want the dark ones to find it.
yeah.
And it's the same thing. And even I've worried for decades now about whether I should be telling people this because you really got to be spiritually advanced and drop all the hatred and the ignorance, develop the wisdom. You got to be at the right stage before you really start learning these higher teachings. So take what you get taught today with a grain of salt and don't really dive into it until you're ready spiritually too. So there's a warning with what I'm about to tell you.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a law, a spiritual law in nature that if you're not ready to hear this, you're just going
You
to get
won't get, yeah,
off. You're going to go, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm
yeah,
leaving. So if you don't know what we're talking about, you probably should leave. Okay.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. We'll keep going here.
And I told you what happened in 2009 when I tried to share this with
Yeah.
spiritual people. It
Yeah,
was just,
don't mention any names.
yeah, I won't, but you know the story. So so I kind of just sat back for 10 years. I've known all this stuff for quite a while, but the real important stuff I didn't figure out until I did a show with you. You started saying these things, and we talked earlier before we got on. We're exactly the same. I knew he was like me. When we write books, we have paper stuck all over, and we don't eat properly, and we walk around like madmen. I was doing that after your show for, I'm not kidding you, 3 weeks. My girlfriend thinks I'm nuts now because
Oh
I
yeah.
was, I
Know
went
all
crazy.
about that one.
You've been there, done that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
My
the
present
lost,
wife is more tolerant than previous girlfriends and wives.
yeah.
They were tolerant of this.
That's
So
because of the Dzogchen teachings.
yeah,
Just mellowed her out a bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's quite obvious when I looked at Shirik Tushra's calendar, the only way that we would know this in our past if there was a higher civilization that brought it to us. Because how do you measure 24,000 years, say 15 times to see a cycle? You can't. We don't have that history on planet Earth. Even if some of this stuff was lied about, and we do go back a long ways, there's no recorded history.
No,
The
listen, Chinese medicine,
yeah,
yoga, they came to us fully developed.
yeah,
That to me is the more the proof of the higher culture that pre-existed than anything else, because
yeah,
we don't have the first book on yoga. It just
yeah,
came, and it was all complete. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
100 done. The same with Chinese medicine.
yeah,
It was complete and done. And so that to me is just proof.
yeah. Hopefully, by the end of this podcast, you'll even have more proof. So those four Vimanas mentioned in the Vedas, one was interplanetary, and the other were two were for intercontinental, and one was for within a continent. All the ones that flew within the planet used rasai, which was a type of gas, and the ones that flew interplanetary used a gas called quicksilver, mercury. So they had some kind of mercury-based
Yep.
technology.
Yep.
And my personal belief after doing all this research is the Anunnaki found their hearts at some point and realized that they created, because you could fly to another planet, create a bunch of beings to go gold mining or whatever, but you can't control where the souls are all coming from. And so
Oh
they realized,
yeah, I think you're right. I think Enki had a soft spot for humanity,
yeah,
and Enlil thought that Enki had betrayed him
yeah,
because then we have the Prometheus myth, you
yeah,
know. the gods got so angry at him for giving us fire that he had to get crows tear out his liver for 1,000 years or whatever. And
Yeah,
we have all these myths of them having a soft spot in their heart. Some of them having a
yeah,
soft
some of
spot
them.
in their heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you know what? I really think that we outperform them. I think once they saw us starting to paint pictures and
Oh
write
no, that's
music,
they're so
I
jealous.
think we freaked them out a bit, and they were
Oh
like, "Holy crap, these guys are actually better than we are."
no,
But that's just
I've always said that when the Anunnaki first heard Bach, they must have
Bach, yeah,
given up. We can't do this.
yeah.
They don't
I
have the creative ability that we have,
yeah.
and we're not sure. Did they spike our genetics, or is it just part of our nature, or something? But
You know
um,
what it is? What I think it is personally is I think that when you think of like a big bang in a universe goes like this, the souls, all the souls, that plasma ball inside of us all goes out at the same time, but some go out before the other ones. And so we're not all the same age and the same experiences. And
yeah,
I think the souls that we're incarnating here, we're deeper. So we have more at the soul level as well that they didn't see. It wasn't just the genetic part that our souls, we're very powerful beings. That's why Archons like us so much. We are very powerful beings, way more powerful than we ever would imagine.
I agree totally.
Yeah.
That's what alchemy teaches.
Yeah. So this guy over here is Shirak Tushwar.
Yep.
He's what I would call a Maharishi. Like you have rishis, which would be like a holy man. A Maharishi is like a holy man plus plus. He
Right.
was he was like a Krishna almost.
Yep.
Very important person.
Totally agree with you. Very
Yeah,
important person.
yeah. And he was the one that first determined that our almanacs were wrong. Sorry, I just got to close the door here. I got a bad German Shepherd.
I
This
was
guy here.
afraid you were being attacked by a Terminator.
That'll be tonight after they see the show we're going to produce here. So he said in the laws of Manu is the real Yuga cycle and not this 4.32 million years. And the 4.32 million years cycle is back to the Sirius one. We're talking about how Sirius should be going away and it's coming the other way. I believe because in the laws of Manu, it talks about two cycles. It talks about this 24,000 year one with the binary,
Yeah.
but then our sun drifts with other suns as it does a spiral in the galaxy. And that drift with these other suns is much slower. And we're drifting towards Sirius, and I'll explain that later and why it's so important. Sirius has a major effect on our consciousness and everything on this planet. It is the most important star in our whole local area, I believe, more so than Alpha Centauri, Beta Centauri.
Yeah, my good friend Robert Temple wrote the Sirius Mystery and all about it. How
Yeah,
the Mali tribe in Africa,
Africa, they knew about it.
knew that it was a triple orbit star, and
Yeah,
we didn't find that out until the Palomar telescope looked at
yeah.
Sirius and saw the little third star orbiting.
We didn't even know it was a binary until the
Huh?
American Civil War.
No.
1865, they saw it
Yep.
on the telescope,
Yep.
just after the American Civil War. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly right.
So in this theory, it's based on these ascending arcs. So you have a 12,000 year descending arc and then a 12,000 year ascending arc.
Yep.
And it's between two suns, our sun and its binary. And our binary is probably not a red dwarf. Otherwise, they probably would have found it by now because they found the red dwarf around Beta Centauri and Alpha Centauri. Ours is probably a cool, dark brown dwarf star. And that would create the long orbital period. So it's and when he describes it as electric and magnetic arts. And then when he describes the soul, he describes them as the five aura electricities of
Right.
the causal body. He's
Yep.
talking about plasma. He's talking
Yep.
about but they didn't have plasma in their terminology then. So he was talking about the electric universe, but it really was the plasma universe.
That's right.
They just used electric and magnetics to describe it.
You
So
won't really understand his writings if you don't know that. That's what's
yeah,
so weird about it. You
yeah,
you think he's out of his mind if you don't
yeah.
know. He's actually talking about the plasma universe.
Yeah, it took me about 7 months to figure that out. I'm a bit slower than most people. I didn't figure it out right away either. It's like, hey, wait a minute. He's talking about the plasma universe. He knew this quite a while ago.
Yep. There's no doubt about it. If you go back into the Vedic lore and you know about the plasma universe, suddenly it's just like reading a science book almost.
Yeah, you know it. Yeah, you know it. Yeah, exactly. So the piece that I was still missing that you helped me find is I did a podcast with Jay and I had to go back and probably put about 15 more pages into my book and update it because he made me think something deeper about something and I figured out, and one of the pieces I was missing is in my first book called Remember Zen, I did a whole chapter on trying to describe how Jesus and Gnostics were saying the same thing as the Buddha, but I
Yeah.
couldn't quite link where the information was coming from because when I started looking at what the Essenes were teaching, they were said to have a secret teachings to help sleeping souls awaken. And I thought, what is that teaching? What is that? It always pointed back to Egypt. It didn't point back to the middle or to where Buddhism came or where it always was going back to Egypt. And I knew there was something in Egypt that they also knew this, and I knew that Thoth had this teaching. Somehow it was in the Egyptian teachings as well. And Rex Baird at Leak Project was the one who got me onto this. He used to bring up the above chakra wheel all the time. And when I found that they hid the secret in the wheel, the secret teaching that it's hidden in the artwork. So I started looking at the artwork in Egypt. Guess what? It's hidden in the artwork in Egypt too. They did the same thing, different teachings from different previous masters, but they were saying the same thing. And they hid it in their art. So they all hid this from us. They all hid it from us. It's quite.
I think they're preserving it, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And,
They weren't hidden because they thought we were
no,
too stupid to know it. They were
yeah,
waiting until we came out of the dark
that's
age,
right. That's
and
exactly.
then these kind of podcasts would happen, and people would
Yeah,
figure it out.
that's right.
So so they were monitoring these extremely long periods, but this is where the Sirius one. So this is the binary doing its 24,000 year thing every time, blah blah, over and over and over. And to be
Yeah.
able to see that, you would have to be an advanced race. But the whole solar system is drifting to another star, and that's what's causing that's the 4.32 million year drift. And guess what that star is? That star is Sirius. I know for a fact now that that star is Sirius. That is a very
Maybe.
important, very important. So they were monitoring the kind of binary, because I don't think it goes right around. They just kind of come closer and they go out
We'll
again.
see.
Yeah. And why it's serious is because I'm going to show you how light affects consciousness. Sirius is different than all the other stars in our area. It's 25 times more luminous.
Yep.
Not brighter, but luminous. So its energy is much, much stronger. And it's where the Blue Lodge, you've heard of the Blue Lodge of the White Brotherhood, it's
Right.
around Sirius. So
Yep.
talk about more about Sirius, but it's Sirius. So you were right about Sirius. You were bang on right about why.
And I think it's Homer. I can't remember who it is. One of the ancient Greeks described Sirius and said it had a reddish hue. This is very odd, and astronomers have been puzzling over that. For, of course, he also said that the sea was the color of wine, which is a
Yeah,
very odd thing to say. So I don't know. Maybe he was colorblind.
yeah. So this Sirius is the second motion. And most people think, well, wouldn't it be Alpha Centauri and Beta Centauri?
Sirius.
But it's not. Alpha Centauri is roughly about 1.12 the size of our sun, and Beta Centauri is about 0.84 the size of. And I know somebody will write in, it's 0.85, you lie,
Yeah,
but roughly the size of the sun, and they only have a 100-year orbit in their binary. So the first star right next to us is a binary, but it's more than that. It also has a third star going around called Alpha Proxima
yeah,
Centauri, and
yeah.
it's a red dwarf. and it's way smaller than the other two, and it's got a 500,000 or year. Imagine trying to do the Vedic sidereal zodiac and Yuga cycle for that system. It would be very bizarre because you've got these two stars doing this, and then another star going like this. And the first star that they think has life on, or the planet, is the planet that goes around the red dwarf in this system. Um, so and they're seeing lights that never go off, artificial lights on this planet. So they think there's life on this planet. If they do prove there's life on Proxima B, it's gonna blow. Like, that's maybe where the Anunnaki came from. I don't know for a fact, but there's something strange about this Proxima B having lights on it now too. And so a lot of people always write in when I talk about a binary. We're not in a binary, you stupid, things like that. And guess what? The next star that's affecting our consciousness, Alpha Centauri, it's also a binary. Well, it's kind of a trinary, but it's also a binary, and it's only 8 light years away. So the most luminous, the most brightest star in our local area is also a trinary and has all these weird properties about it.
Yeah.
And it's only 8.6 light years away.
Yep.
And the most important thing is this place, the Great White Lodge, is located there in Sirius A. And I don't know what it is, but if Ascendant Masters put a lodge beside a star, there's something more, and it's about the luminosity. This star is like a holy star almost. It's the type of star you want to be by. You don't really want to be by a red super giant blowing off energy. You want the more stable, chill stars with lots of luminosity to have a great place. It's
I was interviewing Robert Temple, not about the Sirius mystery, but about his new book about the plasma universe. Must have been about a year ago, and I brought up the fact that I live in a place where you can really see the stars really well, 8,000 feet, and I go out in July, and the helical rising of Sirius is happening in late July, exactly like the Egyptians described it 5,000 years ago. Only the precession of the equinox, we should be a whole quarter of the way around the clock, yet we're not. Sirius is still rising at about the same time as it was 5,000 years ago. So this would explain why that's happening.
Yeah, explains exactly. And thanks for bringing that up, because I just never had figured it out. Sometimes you have to talk to somebody else that knows all the same crap that you do, and then they shake it out of you, kind of. So it's should have did the show with you when decade ago. We should have done the show, but that's just life. It's but the second thing that's weird about Sirius, and I'm going to pronounce this Russian guy's name probably incorrectly, so no bad comments in the comments. Nicholas Roerich. But it has kind of, Have you read his books?
Oh yeah, I've been to the museum in New York. And
No, I have never met you. So you've read The Leaves of El Morey's Garden 1 and 2.
Oh
my
yeah.
goodness. Holy smokes. That's kind
I
of scary.
became obsessed with him about 30 years ago.
So did I.
Yeah.
I was only about 20 after the eclipse that I tell you about. That's when I got obsessed with him. But he apparently, when he made the journey to Asia to take, nobody really knew what he did, but he was taking a piece of the Chintamani stone back to Shambhala. That's why he went to, and it wasn't a small, like they had to have like a couple hundred, 200 troops with them to protect them so they could go through Asia, because they went into Mongolia and Tibet and all these places to take this stone back. And apparently the Chintamani stone is why Hitler was so preoccupied with getting into Tibet, is they were the only ones that had access into Shambhala, and he wanted to get the Chintamani stone, because whoever holds this stone from Sirius, it comes from Sirius A. Whoever holds this stone rules the world. It's some kind of special stone. I don't really, and it was what was inside the Ark of the Covenant, that stone.
I think
and so what happened?
It allows you to communicate with Sirius, is what I think.
Yeah, and brings that condensed energy in that star to here somehow. I don't really.
Right.
It's because his wife Helena said that you couldn't even approach. They only had a piece of it. They didn't have the main stone. They just Solomon King Solomon cut off a piece to make a ring, and that's how Solomon was able to subdue the dark forces with that ring, and that's how they built the temple and did all the work for him. But he shouldn't have done it apparently. So that the piece that he cut out of the Ark of the Covenant, that's what Nicholas Roerich was taking back to Shambhala, because I guess they wanted it all back. I don't. And it sounds like a crazy story, but it actually, I didn't see the ring or the rock myself, but the story is true. They went on this huge, his son almost died when they going over the mountain ranges, Himalayas too fast, even on horseback. You gotta take your time and slowly go through. Like they went on this epic thing to take the stone, adventure to take this stone back. So there's more to Sirius than we think. And I think that stone and the Ark of the Covenant has more to do with the energy of that stone that came from originally from Sirius. So this lost golden age of enlightenment, I think, goes right back to Gobekli Tepe. And according to Plato, Atlantis was a place that existed 9,000 years before his time. And Plato was roughly 300 BC, so we got 9, 10, 11, getting about 11,500 years, right around when all of this chaos happened in the driest period, which was when the stars came back and did one of those things and had perihelion, is my belief. So the timing fits. The timing of Atlantis fits to what these people were saying. Gobekli Tepe was erected exactly around 12,000 years ago. In our first interview, I said that they buried it before the star came in, before perihelion, but I think it's also possible that they made it after perihelion, and I think they were trying to warn us that in the future, the Pillar 43 where that eagle has his wing out and there's this ball right there, I think that, and there was a crab below, I think they were telling us this thing's coming up through Cancer again in 12 or 24,000 years. It's coming again. But there's also more to that site, and they were trying to teach us about enlightenment. There's an important message of enlightenment in that site that we all missed. Everybody missed it. So these megaliths that were erected started at the time of Gobekli, but they go all the way down. They were making them right up until Nazca Lines 2,000 years ago. So they were creating these monuments of memory so that we would have it, but they were also just using them to enlighten people because that was their golden age and their Treta Yuga. It was their silver age. It was still a good time even after perihelion. You're still in a high. It's hard to build back, but they were still in a good spot basically. So I tried to do this site here now to show these monuments of our history. So right at our last perihelion was 11,500 BC. So that's the time when our sun and its brown dwarf, cold brown dwarf, came together. And that's the height of a golden age. So when two stars come together, consciousness is at the peak. And then when they go the furthest out and reach the farthest point, which was 536 BC, is where you have at the height of your dark age. So we were at the height of our dark age, right at 536. In Shirak Trishwa's model, he said 500 AD. But when I looked at our history, it was either Krakatoa or Toba supervolcano went off in 536, and all of Europe went dark. It took 200 years before the world even got kind of normal again. And it's still not normal yet, because we're right over here now. We went through the dark age, and there's a buffer zone between the dark age and Dwapara Yuga that lasts about 300 years. So Shirak Trishwa calculated in 1895, we were exactly just right there. We left around 1700. And so if you add 1700 plus 300, you get around 2000. And then you got to add the fudge, right? Because this was, they obviously, whoever made this calendar didn't go right down to the exact year. And you wouldn't have to, because, it just doesn't make sense to do that. So it was very close, but not exactly. Yeah. I think it's probably 12,100 years or something like that.
There's always some slop.
Yeah, there's some slop there, exactly. So if you start looking at these sites, we have Nazca lines in Peru that were erected right about this time frame. And
Yep.
then you go up a little bit further, and they got Mongolian Stonehenge. They got Stonehenges all. The Roriks found them all over Mongolia and Tibet. These
Yep.
Stonehenge, these rock outcrops.
Yep.
They found well Stonehenge. They used to think was 2,000. Now they're saying it's probably could be 4,000 or even older, because you can go to one of these sites, dig up a pit. There was a fire, and you get bones, but the site had already been there for 1,000 years. So you're not carbon dating it right either. And then there was another in Treta Yuga, which was the time of Rama, because Krishna was right about here, and King David was right as we just before we went into the Dark Age. Buddha, Jesus, Padmasambhava, all of those great masters came in the Dark Age,
Yep.
and so we had the best teachers come to us in the Dark Age because we needed that.
Yep.
They came at the right time, right?
Yep.
But but you see another big chunk. These sites were built in Treta Yuga, like the one in Armenia goes back to Treta Yuga. There's another one. I'm sorry, our screen blocks half of it out here, but it goes all the way up to Gobekli Tepe. And what my belief is, and as we explain this throughout the show, is Gobekli Tepe is like a Buddhist version of Nalanda. In the ancient Buddhist world, there was this city called Nalanda, where it was like a university. All the best teachers, Nagarjuna taught at Nalanda. All the best teachers, all the best Mahayana, Vajrayana works were like there was a major library. It was like the Library of Alexandria for Buddhism. And
Mhm.
it's gone now. Some king came in and burnt everything down. But I believe Gobekli Tepe is a modern version of Nalanda, but it's just 12,000 and a half years older. It's just a lot older, but it's the same site. And I'll explain how I know for a fact I'm right on this. The world might not know for another 100 years, but I know I'm right on this, what this site was really for. And then, so if anybody says none of these sites are used for predicting eclipses, that's just crazy. I'll show you how they used them for predicting eclipses and did all the astronomy that you want and ever want to do on them. But they also found this Antikythera mechanism in a Greek shipwreck, and
Yep.
the shipwreck was 2,000 years old, and the device they figure might have been like a 500 or 1,000-year-old relic itself. So why do they have a device in a Greek shipwreck that can predict eclipses with precision? That device was just mainly used for predicting eclipses, you know. Most people don't know that. And it's like a Rolex watch. There's no way they could even build that thing at that time. And here it is. So
Pretty
the
amazing.
proof is, the proof is in the pudding all over the place when you see the bigger picture, right?
Yep.
So just to quickly remind people, as when the stars are the closest together, we're in a dark age, and dual mental virtue, which means human good consciousness, is only at 25%. That's a dark age. So right now we're at probably 28% good and the rest is crap. Once we tick over that line, which I think is either sometime this year is my guess, or soon, it changes very quickly. You're going to see what we saw in the last 300 years of change. You're going to see the same thing in the next 20 years or 30
Oh
years.
yeah. There's a great book out called The Coming Wave, all about where technology is headed, and woo, are we headed for it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and then when they're the furthest apart is a dark, or sorry, I did this wrong. When they're the furthest apart is a dark age. And we were at this point right at 500 AD or 536 AD. And things were pretty dark then. That's when the Roman Empire fell. That's like you said, we kind of fell off the map for a couple 100 years before we slowly started coming out of it. And
Actually, we in my calculation, we fell off the map for about 800 years.
yeah, we did. You're right. We
There was
actually did.
no advances in anything from 400, 500 AD to 1400 AD.
Yeah,
The
you're
same
right.
boats, the same weapons, the same construction methods. I mean, nothing happened, and no one can explain it to me.
Yeah. And the same chaos, because this is the dark age. So if you look at our dark age, this is when all the wars in Europe were happening.
Yep.
And on this side, this is when all the Persian wars, the
Yeah.
Chinese wars, we were just doing crap through the Mayans. Everybody had fallen down.
Everybody was killing everybody.
We're all dirtbags. And I know modern humans always like to blame something else. Forgive yourself now. You just say, I did all this in the last days of the dark age,
Yep.
because soon you won't be able to have that excuse anymore. We're going past it. We're blowing past the bullshit real soon.
Yep.
So a binary is a perpetual motion machine designed for the evolution of all consciousness. This is Hashem. This is God. This is Creator. The universe is just this, everything is precision. There's some chaos, there's some randomness, but there's also very specific precision about it too. It's like a precision timepiece. And this is my own quote, by the way, so it's trademarked now. And but so the yin and yang symbol really is representing that binary dance. And that's what they were trying to show us in this original. We all miss that too, but that's what that symbol really is. It's your binary, your darkness and your light, and how that dance occurs, and it goes on for infinity. But I believe that it's different this time. Like, we're not just going to tick over for another 20,000 years and then go into another dark age and start stealing and having WEF and all these other control mechanisms. I think we're an ascending planet. This heaven comes to earth now at some point, not next week, not next month, like in a solar flash or all these goofy ideas. We're not going to change to fifth dimension one day overnight. If you believe that, shut this video off right now, because you're not going to learn anything from me. It happens slow. And the teachings, you have to learn better teachings. You have to seize this moment. And we're not going to seize the moment with all this new age spiritual fluff. This is the time for the greats to come back.
Yep. Thank you for that adult view of spirituality.
Yeah. Well, I've been dating mining your site too, Jay. I got a lot of this thought from you as well. I get a little bit of my thoughts from everywhere. I've heard you say that a lot, and you're the only one that put the proper calendar on that, because that 24,000 year cycle, that's our real calendar. That's our real calendar. And you were the only one that ever put it up. Everybody else was, and the people that did use it, they explained it incorrectly. They didn't have a clue what I used to watch them as like, come on, man, like it's but you're the only one that used it. So yeah, so it's data mining. So the Mayan calendar started at 314 BC. And the civilization never really took hold of about 700 AD, 800 AD, depending on who you talk to. So why did they have this calendar that goes to 3100 BC? It doesn't make any sense, right? And if you use their calendar, it's exactly a 5,025 year calendar.
Yep.
Well, that calendar that's out on the Alberta prairie called OMAC, which is a 5,000 year calendar as well. The guy, I talked to the researcher at that site. He actually phoned me. I told him about my theory. I think he thought I was smoking something funny a little bit, but he listened to me and he was very kind. We talked a lot. The guy who found OMAC was a chemical engineer from, he was a university genius. He didn't go in there and say, this is just a medicine wheel like the typical native medicine wheels are. He said, and he figured it out completely. So we actually had, sometimes you need non-archaeologists looking at these sites and have people who think differently, because modern archaeology is not uncovering these sites properly. They take their traditional scientific methods and they basically screw it up. Yeah. So what my brilliant idea was wait a minute, if we got a 5,000 plus or minus, because he told me 5,000 plus or minus 200 years calendar, and we got a Mayan calendar that's 5,125 years. The Mayan calendar talks not about the end of time, it talks about the new cycle and the return of Bolan Yoktai Ku.
Yep.
Who is Bolan Yoktai Ku? Kalki. You made the movie about it. I could be wrong, but I'm certain it's the Kalki. And so when I looked at those, I thought, well, what happens if you plug in the number for Krishna when Krishna departed at 3102 BC? So all of these sites were built at that time. That was the biggest event that happened in the world at that time. What happens if I use those Krishna's departure date and plug it into these calendars? They all ended up 5,124. Or sorry, 2024, 2025, because they count it in days, not by years.
That's right.
So it can be a little, it's a little bit of slop in that as well. So
Yep.
I think that right now and next year are it doesn't mean the Kalki comes back that time, but the big shit, something's going to happen soon. And then I thought, well, I'll know for sure if the world starts going crazy. And well, we know what happened in 2020. What's, like the world's gone crazy now. And I think that's part of the design is they know that the consciousness is going to change. So they got to get rid of free speech and have more control
That's right.
to keep the sheep in the right pen, right? So
Yeah,
I
and
think that,
Zbigniew Brzezinski said, like right before he died, that we've got to go faster. They're waking up.
yeah, yeah. And they're going to wake up real fast.
They are.
Yeah. And so this 1200 year this is a 1200-year old prophecy from Padmasambhava. So he's seen as the second Buddha in
Yep.
Tibet. He walked there, or well, some say he flew, but he went to Tibet from India. It was around about this like the 700 AD time frame. And but he had this prophecy that he said that when the Tibetans are scattered throughout the world like ants, and horses run on iron wheels, cars, and iron birds fly in the sky, jet aircraft. Got to remember, this is a 1200-year prophecy from one of the greatest Buddhist masters of all time. The Dharma will come to the land of the red men. And the land of the red men is Turtle Island, which is Native Americans, which is North America.
Yep.
And the lineage holder of Shirak Twishra's group now, his name is I've been practicing his name so I don't say it wrong, but it's Siddharth Hamsa Yoga. He's basically the lineage holder of that lineage. He says that the future incarnations of Shirak Twishwar and Lahari Mahasaya will incarnate on the west coast of North America, and they'll teach up and down the borders of of the west coast. And this guy's telling me this, and I'm like, my mind's blowing. And then you did a show once where you went to a stupa in Crestone. You know the one in Crestone?
Yep.
Well, most people don't realize the Karmapa, the sixth or is the 16th? Yeah, 16th Karmapa's relics is buried in that site. That's not small potatoes, man. To put a Karmapa's you must be pretty close to that site to put a Karmapa's relics in a site like there's something way bigger going on that they're not telling us yet. I've tried to squeeze it out of them, but you know how Tibetans are. They won't tell you. They won't tell you anything about Shambhala, nothing. You can't get anything out of those guys. Like that's
No, they're all over the place here in
yeah,
Crestone. Probably at least 100 Tibetans that come here all the time and teach. And they say that this is the closest to Tibet in the entire world, to the
yeah,
same way it looks and
yeah,
feels. We're not as high as them, but
yeah,
yeah, that stupa is really powerful.
yeah. You probably could you feel it? Can you actually feel the energy? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing.
And most people don't know who the Karmapa is, but it's
Uh,
the Kagyu lineage of Tibet, and he's like the Dalai Lama, but in the they've got their own
yep.
Dalai Lama equivalent in the Karmapa. So very, very the fourth Karmapa taught Jezong Kappa, was a direct teacher, because a lot of times these old masters become students, and the student becomes master, and it kind of flip flops around a little bit.
It's the only way to learn.
Yeah. So I believe that Shirak Trishwar's arrival, he sent Yogananda here as well. Totally
That's
different lineage,
right. I forgot about
totally
that.
different group. Yeah, and they knew too. They knew that Yogananda was sent to Western America. I think he was closer to San Diego or something like that.
LA. It was right on Hollywood Boulevard.
Was it right on? Okay,
Yeah, I
I
used to
think
go there all the
his
time.
I think his site now is, or like the monastery or whatever, is somewhere around San Diego. They got something in San
There was
Diego.
one in the Pacific Palisades. Oh, it may not be there anymore. There was one in the Pacific Palisades, and then there was another one, yeah, down near San Diego,
Yeah,
and then there was one right in the smack of Hollywood. And he used to
yeah,
say that he was told to put everything on the West Coast.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. And here you are on the West Coast, I'm on the West Coast, and we're teaching this stuff now. So it's there's something I think the Great Awakening, like it's not this solar flash and we're going to be 5D, all that crappy here. The Great Awakening is a slower process. It's going to happen in Turtle Island, which is North America. It's not going to happen in Tibet. It's not going to happen in India. It's going to happen in North America this time. And all these masters told us about it. They were very specific about it. It's happening here.
That's why the fight for free speech here
Yep.
in the United States is so important,
Yeah.
because it's this knowledge that they don't want us to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's why I think I'm always get these people saying it's Stonehenge is just built in the 50s and Gobekli Tepe was buried on.
So let's
By
clear
that.
that up, all right? So the Stonehenge, there were drawings of Stonehenge back to the 1400s, all right?
Oh, of
It
course.
fell
Paintings,
apart.
everything. Yeah.
It fell apart through time, and they put it back together.
Yes. There was just some rocks and they tried to stand them
Yeah.
back up. And they shouldn't have done that, I guess, but they did. And but it's there's more to it. It's not just people trying to be cute and clever. I think there's a concerted effort to dumb it down. Because
Yeah.
the next thing they're doing with Gobekli Tepe now is they're trying to say,
Yep.
the big pillars in the middle were for a rooftop. They're trying to say all of these things had a roof on them too. And it's just like, nope, nope, nope. It's not what it was. So I
That
think
makes sense, by the way. That makes
yeah.
real sense, because I never bought the rooftop either.
Yeah, well, you by the end of this show, you're really going to see why. Because the other thing about Gobekli Tepe, all the stones are faced to Sirius. They all face towards Sirius. Like
Wow.
come on, people, they're telling us everything, and we're just walking around like idiots, bumping into each other, and it's right there in front of us. So these ancient civilizations had higher teachings. Now, this is the one that's going to blow you away, Jay. You're going to love this. Most people will never see this, but everybody knows how in pictures of Krishna they put the aura around, and that's where somebody who's shifted their Buddha nature to the top, the crown chakra. And then you see there's pictures of Rama with the aura, there's pictures of Jesus and Buddha with the aura. Even Thoth has this aura, but it's different. Look out, it's right at where the crown chakra is, right just above, because the crown chakra is not within the body. It's the only one that's kind of just in no man's land above your head. And they even called it a moon crown in the ancient times of Egypt. So there's something suspicious about this, but this is the one that's going to blow you away. After we talked on the phone, I started, because I usually go into tourist photographs to find these sites, because they hide all of this. These scientists don't share
Sure.
everything. So I started scouring the internet for sites of Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, because they're very close to each other. They're all just above this very fertile valley where they grew the wheat, which is bag number 3, by the way. That's what's in bag number 3 is the practice of agriculture, is my belief. We'll
Right.
talk about bag number 1 and bag number 2 as we go. But this guy here is in Karahan Tepe. Look at him, Jay. See the thing on top of his head? You
Yep.
see that? When I saw this, I thought, okay, now I know for sure what we're dealing with here. I didn't find a scripture yet. I didn't find any sutras, but look at this guy. When you see modern scientists trying to show pictures of Gobekli Tepe, they'll show a picture of 2 cavemen wearing loincloths, one with a bow and one with a spear in his hand, standing by this thing. Look at this guy. He looks like an aristocratic Roman emperor almost, but he's not a king. There's no crown on his hand. He's got the solar aura. This guy's a Buddha. This guy's a sage. He's somebody. Was this one of the? Because there's been 4 Buddhas in our past. Was this one of the earlier Buddhas? He was right at the top of our golden age. Everybody who studies this, and if you ever, your friend Mr. Hancock, send him this little video and tell him to go to this and start looking. This is a spiritual site, and they were doing the astronomy part at these sites so that they knew when these eclipses were going to come, and they also knew everything else you need to know about the astrology and astronomy. But this guy's not a Stonehenge. Look at his garb. He's dressed quite nicely, but he's got the aura over his that. This is the most important find of that whole damn site, in my view, to
I
tell us
agree.
what's going on there. I was just when I found that, that's when I was sending you emails pages long because I got so excited. I was like, "This is the answer right here. This is it." And I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
So
I
are they
think
saying that that is 12,000 years old?
that's the part that I wouldn't be surprised if they bury it again.
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't either.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't, that's the part I've been trying to figure out. I think it is though. It's right at that site.
Okay, everybody out there, if you know anything about that pit, so one on the right, bottom right, if you
Yeah,
know
this one right here.
anything about that, please write me and tell me, comment or whatever, because that really is important. That's a very
Yeah.
important find. And I don't know how I missed this.
Well, I missed it too. It's just a tourist took this. Some lady, some Turkish lady who takes tourists through this site, they took the picture. So that, I'm a big fan of Graham Hancock's. I know he's probably not into the enlightenment side of the of this stuff, but
You'd be
I want him to
surprised.
start. I want him to go dig into this stuff. Please send him this video and let old Mr. Hancock figure this one out because I'm finished with all this stuff. I'm kind of at the end of my cycle. I'm not going to study this anymore. I don't even want to teach it anymore. I'm just kind of I've done this for it took me 35 years to figure this out.
I know
Like,
the feeling. Well, he
yeah.
might be watching. I'll let him know, but you'd be surprised how many people of high stature actually watch my show. I
Oh, excellent.
went to a conference a year ago, last November, and all these big wig people were coming up to me. Oh yeah, I watch your show. I was like, really? Because I don't get a
And,
lot
and
of
and
hits, but I
and
guess
let
it's
him know there's no trademark on anything here. He can use whatever he wants. He can dig. He can beat it up and disprove me or whatever. I want us all to figure this out together now because I know I'm onto something here.
all right. Very interesting.
Yeah. So how I knew because like I haven't went to all these sites and with a shovel and dug around and I don't want people to get the idea like my background's in high tech and I got an MBA. I'm the last guy who should be an archaeologist on the planet. But I do know a lot about the teachings of Buddha and the mysteries of the Kalashakra Tantra, which hardly anybody knows the real deep stuff. And when you know that stuff, when you look at these other sites, it's pretty easy to see what's going on. It really is. But you got to know this. You got to know what the Buddha knew and what the Kalashakra knew to understand what these other sites were trying to tell us. The Anunnaki or whoever built these sites all knew this as well. I would love to have their sutras. Like, imagine there's some pretty cool stuff out there that we still haven't found yet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Buddha gave this separate teaching that nobody knows about to the king of Shambhala. And his name was Shachandra. He was the first Kalki king of Shambhala. So you hear about the 25 Kalki kings of Shambhala. There was also 7 wisdom kings that came before. So when you hear about the 32 number and the 25 number and you know what's going on, because that one stumped me for a long time. It's actually, there was 7 wisdom teachers before, and then he was the first Kalki king. And the last Kalki king, which you made the movie about, comes. They say each Kalki king rules for 100 years. So if Buddha was 2,500 years ago and they only rule for 100 years, we're at the time. Like we're at the time.
Yep, we are.
Yeah. So there was, and then I also looked at the trying to connect it to Egypt because I used to watch. In my first book, I tried to make a linkage between Buddhism and what the Christ and what Gnostics were saying, but I kept seeing that all the Essene wisdom, the hidden teachings in the Kabbalah type teachings, it all pointed back to Egypt. It didn't point to India. It didn't point to Buddhist teaching. It was back to Egypt. So I couldn't figure out what was going on in Egypt fully until I did a show with you, and it all kind of like popped into place one night about a week later. And so I think I've actually Hermeticism and the Gnostic stuff, which really came from the sort of same knowledge base.
It did.
I think it goes all the way back to Thoth, and there was that hidden teaching that Blavatsky told us about that was hidden, but hopefully by the end of today, it won't be hidden anymore. So the Essenes had this hidden teaching to help sleeping souls awaken. So I thought, where did they get it from? Where did the Essenes get it from? And the longest period that the Jewish people were in exile was in Egypt. The story of Moses and all that stuff. So I thought those ancient people probably brought some of that teaching back to the Middle East when they came back. It was in there somehow. They knew these higher teachings, but like Buddhism, they didn't openly teach them. It was only if they knew you were an advanced student and you were ready to go the last mile sort of in your race, then you got these hidden teachings, is what I believe. And I
Yeah.
think Jesus might have even got, because his parents, Mary and Joseph, were apparently Essenes, and and
Sure.
um, and so was the other guy that was an Essene. So these people definitely had John the Baptist was an Essene. So they had access to these teachings for sure.
No, the whole the entire Dead Sea Scrolls were seen,
Yeah,
and it's just strange how they were discovered. They were laying in a cave for 2,000 years, and then they're discovered at
yeah,
1945, I believe. And so, yeah, the Essenes are an important part of this. They were carrying the Gnostic teachings.
yeah.
Yeah, you see, the Gnostic Jesus is not the same as the Christian Jesus.
No,
They're
I
completely,
think the Gnostics were right.
I do
He
too.
was, he was more like a Maharishi.
Yeah, he was a teacher. He's,
Yeah, and an enlightened one, clearly an enlightened one.
yeah.
But religion comes in and makes all of the bullshit later, right?
Well, if you're teaching that, you're ruled by a demiurge and he's an ass, you're not going to go very well with the authorities.
Yeah.
You got to change it.
I'm still in my head, can't believe that you read the books of El Mor or Leaves of El Mori 1 and 2. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met anybody that's read that book. But anyway, I was glad it was a good, they're interesting. They're for this time too, those they wrote those books, I'm certain, for this time.
I think
They
so.
they were preparing us for this. I'm almost certain of it. So there's this other guy called Origin Adamadius. He was the first Coptic, he ran the first Coptic church in Egypt again, right to Egypt.
Yep.
And he was influenced by, he lived in a house, some lady took him in, and she was a Gnostic. And she would invite the best Gnostic scholars and the Gnostic sages of the time. So he was influenced by all these, and he fought with them initially, but eventually he started getting completely influenced by these early Gnostic teachers.
Yep.
And he taught kind of like what Jesus taught, but he said that we all can be godlike in spirit by doing good deeds, and that the soul comes back many times until it reaches a state of purity. Sounds a little bit like Buddhism, right? Resurrection is really a reincarnation if you look at what this early church was trying to teach.
I'm certain that the Gnostic teachings have been around since ancient Egypt.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think that Buddha must have come into contact with those teachings somehow.
It's possible, yeah.
And
Very,
then, weirdly enough, when what's his name converted to Buddhism, the what's his name, the oh, what's his name? I can't remember his name now, but he converted into Buddhism and he sent missionaries out to all
yeah,
around the world to teach Buddhism. And so it's very likely that they went to the Middle East.
yeah, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of overlap in the ancient world for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, because one of those Stonehenges that they found in um, Holland, in the Netherlands, was exactly on 51 degrees latitude, but it was a wooden one. The wooden ones are actually better than the stone ones because the shadows are more accurate. But they built the stone ones to last forever. But those wooden ones, they're finding thousands of these wooden ones all over Europe now. And the one that they found because I told Rex a long time ago, they'll find more on the 51 latitude because that's the only where the midsummer sunrise and sunset are exactly at 90 degrees, so you can measure equinoxes.
Is that
The
right?
one in Alberta is right on, have to be within a half a degree of that latitude. And Stonehenge was, and then a year later, they found one, not where I said it was, but on the right latitude, 51 degrees latitude. And guess what else they found on that site? A bead from Iraq. So why is a bead from Iraq where Gobekli Tepe originated? It's just right above Iraq in where Turkey is. How did a bead, a 4,000-year-old bead, end up at one of these sites. They went out and they were teaching this stuff to everybody, is my belief.
Yep.
That's what was going on.
I agree.
And and Gobekli Tepe was central to that. So he was teaching about the more Jesus, or the more Buddha-like side of the Jesus teaching, and he also had he was aware of these secret teachings that that came from the Gnostics. So um, in the Leaves of El Morey Garden, if you read it really carefully, the Ascendant Master El Morey was telling him that the church has to go back to the Church of Origin Adamanias. So if all the Christians watching this really want to know their true church, go back to the Church of Origin. And the Romans tortured him. Rome tortured him, and he died like 2 years later. And his teachings are all mixed up. But if you read my teachings and then go back and read, you can see what they tried to change and where they tried to subvert everything.
The Coptic church in Egypt that I went to, they had the alchemical crosses everywhere, and if you actually look at the Ankh, I show it in our book that the Ankh is actually the tree of life,
Yeah,
and it's like the key to the tree of life. And so the tree of life goes back to ancient Egypt, is what I'm saying. And
yeah,
of course, the facades of the Gothic cathedrals were trees of life.
yeah,
Same exact symbology. So, and in the Coptic churches, they have these crosses, which are essentially the tree of life.
yeah.
And they're thousands of years old, 2,000 years
Yeah.
old.
And he also said that Jesus became divine after an awakening. So he obviously knew about Jesus becoming enlightenment. I think the story about the time in the desert when he was tempted by the same story that happened to Buddha, those are Archons. When you
Yep.
first become enlightened, you get an attack from the Archons. They don't
First
want
thing they
anybody
do.
enlightened.
No
I don't
way.
know how they find you, but they find you. And that's the scary part, why you got to take these teachings lightly or not lightly, is I don't think they're going away for right away. They're going to be around for a few hundred years yet,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
They're not going to they're not going away right away. They're not as strong anymore, but they're still there, and they're still trying to have control over things.
That's
And he
right.
was tortured by saying the Father was greater than the Son, by basically saying God's better than the messenger, and he got tortured for that. The Rome didn't want to have that, so it's important guy. And if
Yep.
you read Matthew 6:22, it says, "Therefore thy eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light." Talking about non-duality, third eye becoming single, the whole body shall be full of light. It's all over Christianity. They just
It
miss
is.
it. Yeah,
Christianity is the light body teaching, but the church doesn't know it. They
yeah,
do now, though. The Pope Francis sent out um, priests, to find out if the light body thing was real, and they came back and told him it was. And now
yeah,
they rethink what Christianity really is.
yeah. And you just mentioned the Ankh. You see the Ankh, and this is a picture of Thoth. He's enlightened. This is the shifting of the Buddha nature to the top. That's what I don't care. I don't care how many PhDs, and if you dug in a Egyptian tomb for 40 years, you're wrong if you don't know what I'm going to tell you right now. I know this, but you see this wire, or this device they always have like this with them, with the Ankh, the steel device. If you
Yep.
look at the bottom of it, it's not a spear, it's not a weapon, it's got little fingers. They stuck it in the sand, and they put their lips to this device here, and they tapped it with the Ankh, and it was like a Tibetan singing bowl. It helped open up the chakras. So if you were stuck at your heart chakra, they had the right tone of the Ankh. They touched their lips at nighttime while they were watching full total lunar eclipses. They did all of this at the same time. That's what was going on here. I know that I'm right about this one. That's what those two things are for. I know. I'm 100%. Prove me wrong. That's what I would say. Any researcher, let's debate it. But I'm pretty sure I'm right, that's like a Tibetan singing bowl, basically.
Uh-huh. I believe it.
7,000 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, we
Yep.
knew this crap. So the Archons, these negative entities, the Tibetans called them mountain spirits. Same thing. If you hear jinn, mountain spirits, um, archons. They're all the same things. And they come in, hopefully I'm right, only during kind of the beginning of Dark Ages and at the
Yep.
end of Dark
So
Ages.
they're Kali Yuga presence.
Yeah, they won't be here. And like when that guy, that picture I showed you, that Gobekli Tepe with the big aura, he didn't have to deal with archons when he became enlightened. Buddha, Jesus, Padmasambhava, it's a way bigger spiritual accomplishment to come out of a dark age enlightened than it's easy peasy. I think in the golden age, some kids might even be born enlightened. I don't know for a fact,
I
but
think so.
it's a different time, right? It's
Yep,
just a
yeah.
different time. So this dark night of the soul, after you first become awakened, Padmasambhava went through it, Jesus went through it, Buddha went through it, and that's where these archon spirits, and they arrive within 2 or 3 hours after the event. I don't know how the hell they find you, but the other dimension's easier to see into this one. We don't really understand the spiritual realm, and they just come right away, and they want to throw you off. They want to drive you insane. I'm pretty sure there's some people who became enlightened that these guys were able to drive insane right after they went
Yep,
there. And that's
probably.
the other reason I was scared to kind of teach this openly and sat on it, because I have a friend who went to ashram in India, and some guy came in one night and just killed himself for no reason at all. And I think that it could have been he could have shifted his Buddha nature. The archons came in, it just was too much, and they don't have any power over. If you know they're going to come, you can make them go away in a second. That's how powerful. It's a trick. As long as we fall for the trick and become scared and go crazy, we will. But if we just look at it and say, "Piss off," they're going to piss off. And I think in Tibet they wanted you around other monks. So if you attained enlightenment and you were sitting beside the Karmapa, there's no archons coming around you that night. The Karmapa is there to shield, these higher beings, right?
Yep.
So in the past, everybody knows the only way to attain enlightenment is follow sutras, do your meditations. After a long time, you might become enlightened. There's the Tantra path where a lot of people think it just involves sex. It doesn't. That's where the tumo, where they do the generating the heat.
Yep.
They perfect the three inner and outer yanas. So they got to perfect Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, which is part of the Tantra. And then they perfect Tumo and go all the way up to Dzogchen or Dzogchen.
Logchen, yeah.
Dzogchen, yeah. I actually practiced that one because I knew your wife was involved with that. I practiced that so many times because I always pronounce Tibetan names wrong. I'm really bad at Tibetan names.
All
But
right.
that teaching is the highest Tantra. That's how you get the rainbow body is through the. If you don't
Yep.
do Dzogchen teachings, you're probably not going to emanate the rainbow body at death.
In this room right here that I'm in, every Tuesday night, about 15, 20 people show up here and do the teaching.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, right here in this room.
No way.
Yep.
I never knew that. So you're
I've,
doing.
I've
I'm
got
jealous.
I've got the here, hang on. Show you. Hanging in our room. Right here.
Oh man,
Yep.
I would never. First, you read the leaves of El Morey's garden, and now you're doing Dzogchen teachings in your living room.
Yep.
I'm definitely at the right site doing this one today.
Yep. Pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Well, it is alchemy. That is really the closest thing to any spiritual teaching that I've come across. That was the closest thing to what alchemy really is.
yeah. Do you know that kind of probably the most famous Mahayana master, his name was Atisha. Or not Atisha, Nagarjuna. I'm pretty sure
Oh
you've heard of
yeah, for
him.
sure.
He was an alchemist. He had
Yeah,
a lab. He was a
yeah,
total.
yeah.
A Vedic master taught him alchemy, and he was a total. I never knew this until just like after we did that show. I started trying to and I was like, Nagarjuna was an alchemist. I'm not kidding you. He was an alchemist. It's pretty
Yeah, he
cool, eh?
was. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I never knew that. I do. It was just that one blew me away.
Yeah, it's all the same tradition.
Yeah, yeah.
What
And
it
then
is a bunch of lost souls scrambling around trying to find out what the truth is, and then after many years of it, you discover that it's everywhere on all the cultures in one way or
yeah,
another. It's in Peru, it's in Tibet, it's in Egypt, it's Native Americans have it, and so
yeah. The other one is Shakti Pot, and that's when a master like Shirak Trishwar. I never knew that Yogananda was enlightened by Shakti Pot. Shirak Trishwar could see that he was getting frustrated, and he actually ran away from the ashram and then came back, and he could just tell that it was his time, and he apparently just touched him on the top of the head, and Yogananda was enlightened. And I knew that I was on the right track as I did a podcast once, and one of the original disciples of Yogananda wrote me and said, "How do you know our secrets? How long you been in the?" Asking me how long I've been in part of the group, and I said, I've never been. I'm not a sannyasin in your group." I said, and then she was like, "How do you know?" And I was like, I said the Tibetans knew this as well, not just the
yeah,
Indians. The Tibetans knew it,
right.
and. The other way is you can also do it what I call accidentals. And I think a lot of these people who are waking up and they start writing these books that just go around in circles, they're enlightened, but they're accidental. And they're just an old soul whose time it was to become awakened, but they don't have a teaching. And then they try to make a teaching and they don't have a practice. And they try, and then they're just confusing people probably more than some of these guys talking about solar flashes and rainbow bodies and all the other misinformation out there. So it
Who
doesn't
could you
really
be
ever,
talking about?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sly, aren't I? Um, I just can't help myself. Sorry.
All
Sorry.
right,
And then the last way is if you can go around Mount Kailash 108 times, you
right.
can also become enlightened, but you pay a price if you do that. Because they say Mount Kailash has some radioactivity or something, and you age when you do that journey. So if you go up to Mount Kailash and go 108 times, you're probably going to look like a bag of crap when you come back. You'll be enlightened, but you won't look so good. You'll age really quick. And then,
Yeah,
of course, divine grace. I think sometimes it's just Hashem says, "Okay, it's your time. Go for it."
yeah, yeah. The universe just decides.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to talk about an Avtara or a Maharishi. They're a little bit different than just an average enlightened person or somebody. These are they left a perfect state of Bodhi. So somebody like Buddha or somebody like um, Tsongkhapa or somebody like Atisha or Wei Nung, like this guy right here, they all left a perfect state of Bodhi to come here to help us. They
Right.
didn't need to come into this world
Bodhisattvas.
system. Yeah, they didn't need to come. They came to help us.
Yeah.
And we usually nail them to the cross and 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 treat them like crap and you know what I mean? But it was a descension for them to come here. So that's why Tibetans, if you're a teacher, a Dharma teacher, you get so much respect in Tibet because you're helping liberate other souls. So they don't mess with you. They don't leave horrible comments. They don't, they appreciate when you help liberate souls, and they treat you such. So I want to correct about this rainbow body. There's so much misunderstanding, so much confusion about the rainbow body. And it was first witnessed with when Padmasambhava passed. When
Yeah.
he passed, he started emanating these bands of light. But the interesting thing is there's only 5 bands. There's not the typical 7 bands of light. There's only 5. And if you look at the higher Tantra teachings that the Tibetans follow, the Dzogchen, they only work on 5 chakras mainly, where they're circulating that life force through the 5 because the crown is in a different dimension. You don't even worry about that one till after enlightenment. And the root that's the monkey mind sort of stuff. So they a lot of them just do, they got 4 drops.
Yep.
Sometimes they do a drop from here to here and then a drop. And so they have techniques. And
Yep.
that's why it's like a city. That's why Tibetans, when a lot of these lamas die, they generate that light, is they've developed those cities to such an extent. That's what happens. Whereas a Zen master who doesn't do the more cyclic type meditations. He's still enlightened. He knows the same bliss, exact same thing. Just when he passes, he might not radiate the rainbow body. And it happens at death. A lot of these new agers are trying
Yeah.
to position rainbow bodies.
Thank you.
Send me $50 and I'll tell you about the rainbow body, and you might have one next month. And it's like they never tell them you gotta attain enlightenment and die, and then
Yeah.
you got your rainbow body.
There's never been a rainbow body that lived through it. So
Exactly, I like that.
yeah, it's just so silly. In 2012, we're all going to become light bodies. It's like
Yeah. It's just nuts
nuts.
when you study the ancient Tibetan masters and a lot of the Zen masters of Japan and the Chan masters of China, and you watch these New Age guys, it's just like,
Drive you
oh
crazy.
God, did they ever read a book? Did they actually ever pick up a sutra? I don't think they have. I really don't. They
No,
watch videos like this and they pick up the highlights and then they just go start a video and start talking.
cherry picking. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It's cherry stealing, really. But it's
Yeah.
like so I hope I clear. Oh, and another one is this guy here, Wei Nang. Wei Nung is the proper pronunciation. Some people call him Huey Nang, but Wei Nung I think is. And here I'm the last person you want to talk to about proper pronunciation. But when he died, that guy's dead. That guy died in 700 A.D. That's him. He hasn't decomposed. And apparently when Yogananda died,
No, he
that
didn't either. Yeah.
he didn't decompose. It's
No.
because they're higher beings, and when their light body steps out of their physical body, something causes a crystallization where there's just no nothing. There's no the body doesn't decompose.
Yep.
That guy's been sitting outside. They change the robe every now and again. You know, he's not going to win a beauty contest, but that guy's been sitting there for 800 years and nothing. And then when they cremate these Japanese or Tibetan lamas, see these little pearl-like things in this dish up here? It's
Yep.
called ring cell.
Yep.
And that's how they know that the person really had higher attainments. After they cremate them, if they find the ring cell, they know
Yep.
for sure this was a divine being.
Yep.
And I think some of that ring cell is in that Crestone place out in your area from the
Yep.
Karmapa. Like that putting a Karmapa's ring cell into a stupa in your back. That there's something else going on there that we don't know yet, but I think it's going to be interesting to find out when we do. Like it's
Yep. No, there's Tibetans who said that that Crestone area is going to be a place that's going to thrive spiritually.
yeah.
So I think you're right.
We'll set up an ashram there maybe, and we'll
Yep.
teach them what the rainbow body really is. And this guy over here, that's Jay Tsongkhapa. He's the Tibetan master that basically started the Yellow Hat sect. So the sect that Dalai Lama belongs to, this is the actual founder. So if you go anywhere and you hear a Yellow Hat sect like the Dalai Lama giving a teaching, guarantee it's either the Buddha's teaching or this guy's teaching. And Padmasambhava predicted this guy coming. And when I originally contacted you about, I don't know, was it 15 years ago, 12 years ago, long time ago, because your Kalki movie was just coming out. I wanted to tell you that I'm almost certain that a guy like Krishna can send a plenary portion where they come as a full vestive avatar like Krishna or Rama, but sometimes they send a plenary portion, which is just like putting a toe into the system. The other part still up in Vaikuntha, but they can still project a body into a world system.
Yep.
My belief is Nagarjuna, Atisha, Tsongkhapa, and Padmasambhava were all emanations of Krishna.
Yeah.
Same guy.
Yeah.
He's appeared. There are plenary portions. They weren't a full vestive avatar. That doesn't happen until the Kalki comes.
Right.
And if you don't believe me, we'd have to talk offline for hours. But I know because I read all of these guys. They left clues. Every single one of them left a clue. And the other thing that's interesting about all of these guys, influenced by the White Tara. Tsongkhapa met the White Tara, which is like a female Buddha. Tsongkhapa met the White Tara as an old woman on the road. Atisha, the White Tara told him to go to Tibet and teach. but he wouldn't live as long. Tsongkhap or Padmasambhava, he had five white Taras in the flesh with them. He had
Yeah.
like Mandavera,
Yeah.
Yeshi Sogol, and three
Yeah.
other ones. He had them right there with him, and
Well,
there,
you need to have all the girls around you when you're trying to achieve light body. It just really helps.
yeah, yeah, and it makes it more fun, probably
Boy,
too.
it'd be boring without that.
Yeah. If I was a guru in an ashram and I could have five hot white Taras with me, I'd be like, let's go.
Yep.
Forget, can you scrub that part out? That's the old Sheldon coming out. But so they also have this term called an avid hoot. And an avid hoot is like a homegrown avatar. We're all avid hoots. We got to rise up to become like an avatar. But when they reach the same level, there's no difference. So these avatars come to this planet to help make us avhoots. And I think on the soul level, some of us will go out into the multiverse and go to other places and become teachers and become the avatars of that place. That's how the universe works. There's a bigger
Oh,
thing at play here that we don't understand.
you know, I only got 2 hours on this thing, and I'm going to run out in 9 minutes. So, how
Do
we
you
doing?
want to? I've got quite a few slides yet, so
All
like I
right,
would say
let's.
another hour, maybe more.
All right, so then let's break this up into two shows, and we'll do another 2 hours in a couple of days because
Yep.
I've got to go do some things. But this is really good stuff, and I didn't know you were going down this path, and I'm really glad you did because
Yeah.
this is really important stuff for everybody to hear, and especially the Dzogchen, it's like a mystery. People don't
Yeah.
understand it, and so let's recap what we've learned so far. We've learned that these monuments of memory are all over, and they're calendars to mark not just eclipses, but comets and recycled things that are going on. And and this all emanates from this worldwide advanced civilization that existed in the Golden Age 12,000 years ago.
Yep.
And they embedded it into these monuments and art because we would forget during the Kali
Yep.
Yuga. And only when you come out of the Kali Yuga and you look and then you see it and you go, oh, I finally get it. Right. And that's why they did all this. And so what was the secret that they were embedding? I presume that's where you're going with all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
The hidden teaching. That's the hidden teaching part.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the all of these traditions come from this advanced tradition, and they've all lost some, the telephone game where you hear something and then
Yeah.
you can't remember it quite. So they've all kind of remember it, but don't remember it exactly the right way. And there's a few traditions that you are talking about that actually have the goods.
They
And
have the goods. Yeah.
it's the Vedic tradition, it's the Egyptian tradition, and it's the Tibetan tradition
Yeah.
are the main holders of this incredible knowledge that you're going to let us know all about in part two of this series. And who
Yes.
knows, there might be a part three. We don't know. And we shouldn't really judge it because time, I mean, because this is a pretty important teaching.
Yeah.
And and then I just want to go to the last part. Um, the rainbow body, which is the ultimate end game of alchemy and Tibetan practice and Vedic practice and like Peruvian shamanism, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, you have to die to achieve rainbow body. So
That's an important part. Yeah.
yes,
Can you imagine selling that to the masses, but forgetting that
yes.
little part?
Well, they do. That's what we,
Oh,
pisses
I
I
know.
both
I've watched
off
that.
is that these new age people are all running around telling you that you're going to achieve it and that you're going to be able to like
It's
somehow
worse than
stay
that.
conscious of your body.
It's worse than that is they don't even have the steps that you need to take to achieve it. They want the $300.
Exactly.
They don't have the steps. They don't have and the worst yet is they haven't achieved it themselves. And that was the
No.
thing that Padmasambhava warned. He said that in that 1200-year prophecy I showed you, he said
Yeah.
that in that time he called it the time of degeneration, that all these people would arise trying to teach the teachings, but they haven't awoken themselves
Oh,
as
he
well.
definitely warned that. That was one of his most stern
Yeah,
warnings. There was going
yeah.
to be all these fakers and people
Baker.
saying that they were doing this, but they weren't, and they're the worst people on earth, he
Yeah,
thought. And I think there are too, actually. I
yeah.
think I think teaching spiritual teaching when you have no idea what you're talking about is actually almost as dangerous as a nuclear bomb.
Yeah. It's in some ways just about as bad as murdering somebody.
It is. It really is.
It's at the soul level,
Oh my
and you
God, you
hold
could be
so
doing
many people
so much
back.
damage.
Yeah, you hold so many people back, and then the people who can actually teach it, they're just, especially in the West, you just want to go. I don't want even like I'm at that point myself. Like I'm
I am
not some
too.
sensitive snowflake or something like that, but you imagine I came out in before 2012 to try to tell people nothing's going to happen in 2000. Oh man, did I get hit? And then I try to tell people we got Nibiru all wrong. It's not coming in next month. It's this and that. And I got hit for that. I used to get told when I used to do Leak Project ones that I was part of the Illuminati and that they could see it. They always have that picture of the lens flare of Nibiru coming in. Like I've seen this for 15 years now and been called everything under the book. And I'm just trying to share a teaching because like it's there. I know it. And it's a very hard thing to do in the modern world. It's when you have to go through all that crap. Like I'll read the comment section sometime, and they'll start talking about space birds and things like that, and it's like no, it's like this is that stuff doesn't matter. Enlightenment doesn't be predicated on some advanced race landing on the planet to save our sorry asses. We can achieve it ourselves. We're supposed to achieve it ourselves.
So that's
So,
a good place to end this episode because
yeah,
that's exactly right. We can achieve it ourselves. We shouldn't be looking without, we should be looking within. And
yeah.
I want to thank you, Sheldon Moore, for coming on part one of our exploration into ancient knowledge, really. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Jay Weidner. I really appreciate it. And we will be back with part two.